Transit-oriented development is a familiar concept in large cities, where bigger buildings tend to cluster around transit stations because the access makes the land more valuable. New transit lines can also create denser developments at stops along the line, as is being shown in places like Dallas and Portland, Oregon. But what I want to talk about now is the potential for transit to restructure development in the suburbs, where commercial development is surrounded by big parking lots. These parking lots can become giant land banks for new development if transit comes along and provides more access. A great example of what I am talking about is what is happening at Tyson's Corner in Fairfax County, Virginia. Joel Garreau, in his 1991 book Edge City, Life on the New Frontier, presented Tyson's Corner as a new kind of urban place, which might not meet the expectations of city planners, might not even be liked by the people who use it, but was nevertheless a big new development and what was really happening. If you look at the aerial photo, you can see that Tyson's did not look at all like what most people conventionally think a city is when they talk about cities. About a third of the land is devoted to parking lots, and almost another third to streets and access lanes. It's a big area, 4.5 square miles, or 11 square kilometers. And when the Washington transit system was extended out to Dulles Airport, the line was planned to make a detour and go right through the center of Tyson's. You can see on the map how big a place it is. It requires 4 transit stations to serve it. The authorities balked at the cost of putting the new transit underground, so it's an elevated line, which means that it doesn't make the kind of seamless connection to development that you see in downtown Washington. All the same, the transit access enabled the planners in Fairfax County to make a completely new street layout for Tyson's with small, walkable blocks that anticipates growth into a real city. Access from transit is usually measured in circles around the station. The second circle on this map is a quarter-mile radius, about a 5-minute walk. The outer circle is a half-mile radius, which means about a 10-minute walk. Because of the way the elevated transit line is designed, it's hard to build a building right next to it. However, the access from the transit is still pretty good. Here are some of the projected new buildings in the area I just showed you. They don't look anything special. They're ordinary urban buildings. What is surprising is that they are being built in what used to be a very suburban location of parking lots. These are the official plans for new neighborhoods being created in Tyson's. Again, a fairly usual layout for an urban area, but a surprise out at the edge of the Washington Beltway in suburban Virginia. Here's a rendering of one of the new urban environments being created out at Tyson's. Pedestrian spaces, local streets, nothing amazingly new except the location. The rail line out to Tyson's Corner and on to Dulles Airport was very expensive to build. It would not be possible in most cities. Even light rail lines, like those in Dallas or San Diego, are too expensive for most suburban locations. So how can transit unlock the value in the vast parking lots you see in the suburbs when transit is too expensive to build? The answer is that there's a form of transit whose capital costs are low enough to be built in the suburbs. It was invented in Curitiba, Brazil, through the influence of its then mayor, architect Jaime Lerner. It's called bus rapid transit, often known by its initials in English, BRT. These are the transit maps for Curitiba. The map on the left is the express service, with time and accommodation equivalent to a rail line. On the right is the map of the feeder bus services, which, together, give the entire city a comprehensive transit system at a cost that the community could afford. This view shows how the Curitiba BRT system works. Passengers enter the station and buy their tickets there, just as on a big city subway line. When the transit arrives, doors open along the side, so the passengers can enter all along the car, again, just like in a big city metro line, instead of lining up to enter by one door next to the driver, as on a conventional bus. The articulated transit bus is not as big as a metro train, but it has a capacity much bigger than a conventional bus, equivalent to the light rail vehicle. The BRT runs on its own dedicated right-of-way, like a rail vehicle. But the paved busway is much less expensive to build than a railway would be. In this view, the lane nearest the transit is a parking lane. The Curitiba example has been followed elsewhere in South America, notably in Bogota and in many other places, including Istanbul and Bangkok. There has also been some acceptance in the United States, but not yet for the full system as in use in Curitiba. This enhanced bus route, called Rapid Ride, in King County, across Lake Washington from Seattle, runs through a relatively densely populated region. Passengers on Rapid Ride can buy their tickets at machines before boarding, and multiple doors open up on the articulated buses. Inside, the buses are relatively comfortable. There has been some new, denser real estate development at a few stops along the Rapid Ride. And here's a photo along the Orange Line in the San Fernando Valley north of Los Angeles. Part of this BRT line runs along a former rail right-of-way and then along streets. So buses are being used as a substitute for rail service, but it's not quite a complete BRT line on the Curitiba model. The big opportunity for Curitiba type of bus service is along commercial corridors in the suburbs. This is Pacific Avenue, a typical commercial corridor in Stockton, California, identified by Robert Cervero and his colleagues at the Institute for Transportation Studies at the University of California, Berkeley, as a likely site for a Curitiba type of bus rapid transit line. And here is a visualization produced by Cervero and his colleagues showing a Curitiba type of BRT line with a dedicated right-of-way, bus stations where tickets can be purchased before a ride, and vehicles with multiple doors to save time entering and leaving. The visualization also shows how transit access can unlock the value in the adjacent low-scale development with its large parking lots, creating an area around the station stop which has a mix of commercial uses and apartments. These apartments offer a housing option for the single-family neighborhoods adjacent to the commercial street, an alternative place for young people and retirees to live without leaving their neighborhood. This is a visualization by the New York City Department of Transportation of the way a dedicated bus line can fit into a commercial street on Staten Island in New York. It shows that there is room to do it. This is a map of the important commercial corridors in Omaha, Nebraska. The streets that form these corridors could be the location for a BRT system that would serve the whole city. This is Dodge Street, the main commercial corridor in Omaha, at 76th Street, pretty much the geographic center of the whole city. Like so many of these corridors, it has commercial development, which provides an acceptable return to its owners, but it's way under its potential if it were to become a location on a transit corridor. These corridors are land banks, waiting for the transit stops that potentially can reshape them and channel some of the growth that is currently going to the edge of the urban area back into the center, which is where it belongs. Reshaping suburban areas in this way would also have a strong mitigating effect on the forces creating climate change, reducing energy use by fostering more compact communities. Can you identify a corridor in your community which would be a good location for a BRT line? Do you think this change is politically possible? Our next subject is traffic safety. What can we do to reduce the death toll from traffic accidents, which are now accepted as inevitable? The goal is zero traffic fatalities.